Today is Monday, July 1st, 2019. This is LaDonna Smith from the Fairmount Heights Branch Library, and I'm sitting here with
Cheryl McCloud.
And we're going to discuss her history of being from the surrounding area of North Englewood. Say the word for me, please.
North Englewood.
There we go. North Englewood, which is not too far from the Fairmount Heights area. So, Ms. McCloud, tell me about growing up in North Englewood.
Yes, all right. Actually, North Englewood, I was on Reed Street, which is the street right down the street from Fairmount Heights. So we actually, the neighborhood, I always say to people, I was literally raised by a village of educators. And I'm saying that because educators were recruited from Hampton to come into that area in order to staff Fairmount Heights High School. Then there was Mary McLeod Bethune Junior High School and Beaver Heights Elementary. So those were my surrounding schools. Those were the schools that were in my neighborhood. And my mother was a teacher. She was a math teacher, Betty McLeod, and she was at Fairmount Heights High School and Mary McLeod Bethune Junior High School. So my upbringing, almost everyone in every household was either a teacher or someone working in the public school system as a secretary clerical person or a school nurse or someone who was custodial maintenance, somebody. So the whole area were educators. So I was literally raised by a village of educators. So everyone took care of everybody. Everybody knew everybody's business, which wasn't always the best thing. I could never get away with anything. But there was an interesting ritual that my brother and I had. So my mom was a teacher who had to get up very early to get to work. And my dad at the time did quite a few odd jobs. He's been a caterer, taxi driver, and he worked for an electronics company. So he got us up later. So my father was the person that actually got us up and going. So he would get us up and going, and then my brother and I would walk to Beaver Heights Elementary School, and he would go to Bethune Junior. We would have to stop at wherever was the school my mother worked in so that she could check to make sure that we got off okay. So again, everybody took care of everybody. So the neighbors watched out for us, and after school, we all met at Mary McLeod Bethune Junior High School. All of the area kids who had teachers who were still working, and we said we had to do our homework, we had to do whatever needed to be done in terms of even helping the custodial maintenance people. So it was definitely a total school community, no doubt about it.
Awesome. So, being African American, tell me about some of the experiences that you were saying that the village raised the children and the neighborhood, and I can relate to because same thing here in Fairmount Heights, everyone's in your business.
Yes.
So tell me about did you ever experience any racial issues, any segregation, anything of that sort?
So again, at the time that I was growing up, the schools were segregated until about the age I would have been at junior high school. So it was an all African American environment. Pretty much, I will put a little plug in it for a second because there was that moment when the white kids came into our neighborhood. So I'll give you that separate. But one of the things that was great about being in basically a homogeneous environment, particularly in terms of African American, is we learned about our history. We learned about our people, and our teachers made sure we took pride in everything that we did. We did not have, without a doubt, we didn't have the resources in terms of the number one books and things of that sort. I was left-handed, and we got hand-me-down right-handed book desks, if you know what I'm talking about. And because I was left-handed, whenever we did writing, I had to go to the art table because the art table was the rectangular table. So there were a few of us who, whenever there was something that we needed to write, because we couldn't do the cross all the way over your arm in order to write on the right-handed desk being left-handed. So they didn't try to force us to write right-handed. We would go to the art table, and that's where we did our writing work.
Oh wow!
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about Cheryl's memories. I know you were saying about walking to school, you had to stop in and see your mom. Was there anything that was historical or historically impacting that you experienced growing up in North Englewood?
Yes, I would say, and these are some social events, for example, house parties and things of that sort. The McCloud house was a house where there were lots of gatherings that went on. And in fact, and you would have numerous people tell you that the alma mater for Fairmount Heights High School was actually helped to be written by my mother and another gentleman his name will come to me before we're done with this. But they came to my mom's house and decided they needed to have an alma mater, and so it was written. And so there were educators that would come and talk about just how to better educate the students. And then we had a neighborhood where on certain weekend, right before Labor Day, a family across the way from us slaughtered hogs. And then they just had one big, open the door, open your heart, big barbecue, huge barbecue every year. There was a creek that was back behind us, and there was a park that was behind us. So any time of celebrations or anything else, we all knew where to go. And so people just gathered around, and many of them were spontaneous. Never an issue, no violence, no anything. Our parents were always there, or extended family always around. So we just really enjoyed life from an all-black environment. So the answer to further your question, let me think. When it was time for me to go to junior high school, there was a school closing, or a series of school closings. I believe it was Bladensburg, because I'm telling this from a child's eye and memory. But we were suddenly told that there were some white kids who were going to be coming into our neighborhood. And because their school was closing, and so as a result of that, they needed to go somewhere, and we were thriving. So the decision was made, and it was an experiment, and so what happened is the whole communities, both communities, got together to prepare for it. And there was an organization, and it was called, I remember the process was called the charrette. And if you see the movie, The Enemy Between Us, that was just made, that process that is gone through that movie is exactly the process that we had. So they chose community people and students as well, and I was one of the students, and we would get together, and we have the white families and there were the black families. And our mission was to come up with a vision and norms and protocols so that the experiment in terms of desegregating schools would be successful. And everyone wanted to be successful because white kids were coming into our neighborhood. So it took all summer, and we met like numerous times, like 3 or 4 times in terms of the whole summer. And there were projects that we would have to do, and we would have interviews, and they would come and they would talk to us, and we would talk with them, and it was amazing in terms of the things that we learned about each other. So when school then opened, I was in 6th grade at the elementary school, Beaver Heights, but they converted it to a middle school, so I actually moved to Bethune Junior High School in 6th grade. My brother hated it because he was 2 years ahead of me, and he thought he could get rid of me for a while, only to have me turn around and show up at his school. So that was an internal thing, but because he was at the time, he didn't like sisters. Girls were another thing, but I was the younger sister. But other than that, and it worked very well. So, having that experience, when we heard that the schools were going to be desegregated, my mindset was that it was going to be done based on the same experience that we had. And for the first time when it did occur, we got resources that we never had. Typewriters. I had never seen typewriters before. We got typewriters. We got bushes and shrubbery, and they cleaned up the school. We got lunch tables that didn't fall apart. We no longer had the right-handed books desks. We had the desks individualized. Didn't matter what hand you were, right or left-handed, and just new stuff and painting and everything else, just brand new stuff. We had never seen before. But we got them there. So the interesting dynamic that happened with me, I'm going a little bit ahead of probably your questions, is that our family decided to relocate, to move after after 2 years in terms of the charrette experience. So, and it was before desegregation actually happened. So I went from being raised by a village of educators who looked all pretty much like me out to Bowie, Maryland, on the white side of Bowie, Maryland. And in fact, there were it's 301 at 301 and Route 50. And so the homes that were off of 301 on the west part of 301 were 11 homes, and African Americans couldn't move into those homes. Those were built by Mr. Levitt, and my family was looking to relocate, and we were told very much so we couldn't move there. So after looking at a few other places, we went to Columbia and other places. My mom and dad decided they were going to build their house. So we ended up having a house built just for us on the other side of 301. So right now it's where the University of Maryland Science Center, that side, Sherwood Manor, that's where we lived. So my parents decided to build the house. So my first year of junior high school was an all-white high school except for 7 students, and I was one of the 7. So I went from an all-black environment to a pretty much all-white environment, which was amazing to me in numerous ways. So.
Okay. So when you were in North Englewood, I know you said you moved to Bowie, but just, kind of
yes.
get back on North Englewood.
Yes.
So did you guys live in a house?
Yes.
Okay. So
in
tell
fact,
me about
our house is still standing.
Okay. Tell me about that house.
It's 824 Reed Street, and there was sort of like a country store. If you're going, we always say down, up and down. If you're coming from like the Addison Road area, you've got Fairmount Heights High School. And so you're going down the road and you get to Reed Street. And then if you keep going, which eventually is going to take you up around to get to Cheverly, but before you sort of make that edge, there's a little bridge, and there was this little country store that was right past the bridge. So we were 2 houses before you got to the country store. So there was the creek, and that was a little bridge you crossed, and then there was the Neals were the persons who lived next, and then the McClouds lived next to them, so that's where we were. It's a great house. And again, that was the place to gather. So without a doubt, when my parents had house parties, my brother's room was a loft that was converted to a bedroom. So my traditional room was downstairs, but whenever they had these house gatherings, they moved me upstairs. And so I was fortunate enough, because I was small enough, that I could get I was at the top of the step, and I could scoot down like just enough to kind of see what's going on, but like thinking they couldn't see me, and so I learned so much. The twist was out there. And there were a couple of people who didn't know how to do the twist, and I'll never forget, my dad goes into the bathroom and gets a towel, and he brings the towel out, and he says, here's what you do. You put this here, you put the towel around you, and then you just like, those kinds of memories are the memories that I had. And there was, sure enough, I think my parents knew, because there was always a time when they would say, Cheryl, go to bed, that kind of stuff. And then I knew, okay, now they're getting into some real serious adult stuff, and they don't want me to kind of be a part of that. So I think they always kind of knew. And there were a few times we even put on shows ourselves, because my brother was very creative, so he used to take songs like Beatles songs and then put other words to them. And then my cousins, when we had a lot of friends who would come over, and we would just perform and we would just do stuff. So we were very creative, and it was inspired by everyone in the community.
Wow, that's amazing. I can see the visual of your dad with the towel and just teaching people to do the twist.
Yes.
So any other memories that you have about your house and what's going on in there? Mm-hmm. Give me. Okay.
So there was something else too, and that was in the summertime. because in the back, in where the creek was, there was a field, it was a whole field. So that's where we played cards, we played Tonk and War, Not to Play War, all that stuff, Frisbee, you name it, everything else. That's where we spent our days in the summertime. But you always knew it was time to go home when the light came on, the street light came on. And you had 5 minutes from the time the street light came on to have yourself heading for the door or being in the door, one of the two. And we had neighbors on that back street as well. And there was the Monroe's family. And the Monroes, Miss Monroe would always come out right there when the light came on. She wouldn't say anything, but her position let us know that she was going to say something and we weren't starting to head home by that time. So as said, the community, everybody just watched out for everybody to just make sure that we were okay. And that was just great.
So tell me about, did you guys have any stores, any entrepreneurs?
As said, the store, now the store that I'm speaking of, the corner store, was actually, it was just a short convenience store. So there was a family that lived above that. And one of the Cedric Stroud, the Strouds, to this day, he and my brother are still lifelong friends. My brother keeps friends like the Three Musketeers, forever and a day kind of stuff. So the 4 guys, they are still, they're still together. So now my dad worked part-time in a liquor store at some point that was black owned. So again, our neighborhood expanded. The Sheriff Road, Addison Road, because all of that was all still part of the same community. So there were quite a few businesses that were going on along that corridor. And I do know that my dad did work in one of the liquor stores part-time during there. And the catering company, I just don't recall whether or not that was black owned or not. But that was a great way we got food, because we were so excited whenever he went to cater, because then that's how we were introduced to so many different kinds of foods, because he would bring some leftover food back, and there was stuff we'd never seen before, but we would eat, and so that was also an experience that I don't think we necessarily would have had if it weren't for that.
So does North Englewood have any famous people or any historical people that the world should know about?
Ooh. Well, as I said, the world should know about any community that basically every house has someone working in education, because that in and of itself is just, you can't leave that. That carries with you to this day. One of the reasons why I decided to work for a teachers union was I decided not to go the teaching route, but I wanted to do something to say thank you to all of the educators that helped to raise me. And so I went to law school, passed the bar, did all that stuff, didn't want to do court stuff. And I said, well, let me just kind of see what's in law with education. And I ended up working for Maryland State Education Association for 30-some years. And although I worked in all kinds of different school, the school system is organized by county. And so there's a teachers union and an education support professional union in every school district county. So I worked all over the state. When it was time for me to retire, I was sort of on the cusp. I purposely went to Prince George's because that's where I was raised. And I said, what better way to say thank you and, kind of launch a new path would be in Prince George's. So for the last 3 years, 2.5 years, I worked with Prince George's Educators Association. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. There was, we had judges. Lucy Ward was from that, she was down the street, across the street from us. Let's see, and Jessie Ward. We had the Best family, who are also very, very well known. We had who was Dave Bing, who actually his sister lived in that Cheverly, going towards that Cheverly side, lived up in that arena, in that area. Oh goodness, I can say this. I don't necessarily know of many people nationally famous, but what I can say is I would guarantee that the vast majority of those of us who were raised in that community are doing some phenomenal things now. And many of them as a reflection of that and are continuing to help our community grow.
You know, that's always awesome because giving back and being, doing philanthropy. There you go.
I got you.
All that good stuff. It doesn't always take a big name. So it's good that, we have our local celebrities. And some of the biggest acts of kindness are the small things you do.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I will say there is something that I do think, and it's been documented. I was saying that our house was the house of congregation, right? So there was a moment in time when, and Joanne Benson recalls this, my mother, Ms. Benson, and some other educators decided that they would honor Martin Luther King's birthday by taking off from work, because they were all educators, and they came to the McCloud house, and they just sat and talked and compared and networked and everything else. And it started to grow because they started to do it every year. And every year, more and more people would take off from work, in terms of school system, and come to the McCloud house, and we would have this big discussion. And they included us in that as children, to the point where the school system had to declare the day a holiday because they couldn't find enough substitutes. And that's been documented. And anyone who knows that will tell you that actually happened. And so Prince George's County was actually the first county in this state, and I don't know in terms of nationally, that actually already had Martin Luther King's birthday as a holiday for educators. Then when it became a national holiday, the decision was to allow people to celebrate that whichever way they want. And so we moved the day to President's Day weekend, and it became the McCloud Black Experience weekend. And so what started as President's Day Monday, and this is even after we moved out to Bowie, it even got bigger then because the house was bigger and the da-da-da and everything else. And so when we moved out to the Bowie area, even more people came. And so it started off as President's Day Monday, and we would actually have workshops and everything, things for learning about African American history. We had historians come in and speak about Buffalo soldiers and blacks in World War II, that kind of thing. And then we would, we decided, someone says, well, you should have something on Sunday. So we'd have a gospel tea. So we'd have church, and then after church, come to our house, and then we'd have tea time. And there would be little groups sing gospel music, and pianists come and play and that kind of stuff. So somebody said, well, what about the children? So I was like, okay. So we moved it to Saturday. So Saturday became storytelling day for the kids. And there was a gentleman, African-American entrepreneur, who was a police officer by day and a clown by weekends. And he would come and he would teach, all about just sort of how to self-govern yourself and integrity and all of those things for the kids. And then somebody said, well, you need something for the adults in the evenings. And so we're like, well, we'll just have just a chill out in terms of light jazz. And so that was what we would have in the evening on Saturday. Then someone said, what about a fish fry Friday? So we ended up to the point where we had to discontinue it because it got so huge. But we would have the fish fry on Friday. And then we'd have the Children's Day on Saturday. And then just the chill out evening on Saturday evening. The gospel tea on Sunday. And the serious business workshops and things on Monday. And the Oreos, who are our well-known doo-wop group, they would come to perform they came for like 7 years straight to perform on that President's Day Monday for everybody.
Wow. Okay. So did you have if you didn't have any other memories or thoughts you wanted to share?
I think that's probably going to take care of it for you, huh?
That was really concise. I mean, as you were speaking, I just saw the visuals.
Yes.
And I was just like, wow, I wish I could have had the fish. But anyway, no, I just want to thank you, Ms. McCloud, for even taking the time to share your stories.
This project is a wonderful one. I think what's missing everyone has a story to tell, if not more than one story to tell. And it's not about what you write on paper. It's definitely not what you kind of send by email. It's conversation and being able to hear the reflections and the emotions and things of that sort. So I'm sure even though people couldn't see me smile, they could feel my smile, you know? And I think that is just what we are missing. And there's so many stories to be told. And when we tell the stories, that's what we remember, that's what we can relate to, and that's how we continue to connect. So I want to thank you for this project.
Thank you. And just on that note, when you were saying about telling the stories, that's part of our history, to be griots.
Yes.
So that's how we got it. So I thank you again. And I'm going to hit stop.
Okay.